All right. Test 1 2. Test 1 2. Okay, excellent. Welcome back, everyone, to another formative class as we continue in the Peaceful Solution Character Education Teacher Certification Program. You can be seated if you're standing. I hope everyone enjoyed in the last class and was able to go back and rehearse the information that William brought, because we're going to be moving forward and picking up today from where he left off as we continue in Chapter 6 talking about a positive leader or a leader. There is a leader in all of us. Everybody has the potential to lead. Everybody has the potential to guide others in a positive direction. Now, the first and foremost thing that we must learn as we've gone through several of the chapters, the 5 previous chapters in this unit on character, the first unit on character in the intermediate series, is that we have to take accountability for our own actions, right? We have to take accountability for what precedes our actions, as we have learned before, which starts with our thoughts. And it's no different in leadership, because the action of leadership is initiated by the thoughts of the individual, which, of course, this is not just them thinking about leading, but everything that led up to their pattern of thinking that contributes to their thoughts, their feelings, and action, which, as we covered in Chapter 1, ties back into their environment, their genetics, their upbringing, their choices, their experiences, and so forth. All these things that make up a person's character, because leaders also fall into 2 basic categories, positive and negative, and we can't forget that, right? And we can't let any of the teachers that we're instructing and guiding, or the young people that we're instructing and guiding to one day become teachers, forget that just because a person, as William covered in the last class, is in the position of a leader, it does not mean that they're always going to fall in the category of a positive leader. Now, as we covered in Chapter 2 of the effects of character within the family, most families, just like most character, as it is with leadership, falls somewhere in between. A combination of both positive and negative character traits that is displayed through leadership as well. So our focus, as we're going to reiterate today in this class this evening, is as it is the focus throughout all the Peaceful Solution, is accentuate the positive and eliminate the negative. Now, it's necessary to know about the negative so that you can know what it is that you need to work on and eliminate from one's character, or in this case, style of leadership that results from character. But the focus is on working to build the positive character, because we've got enough negativity in society. We have enough examples of negative leadership, and it seems like at times that the negative examples or the negative leaders sometimes outshine the positive leaders that there are. So much so that when an example of a display of positive characteristics are shown, it seems like it's an extraordinary thing, right? Wow, this has taken everybody, taken social media, taken the news by surprise, that a person actually stood up and did something that was correct for a change. We've become so used, and to some degree, society has, as a result of, remember what we covered about influences and the negative influences that we see, in mainstream media, television, movies, yes, even the news. There's a lot of negative influences there as well. And today with social media and so forth, that's become so commonplace. We kind of become desensitized to those things to the point where it could be easy for a person to, think in their mind that, well, that's just normal, right? So when somebody steps outside of normalcy, so to speak, and stands up for what is morally correct, well, it's kind of extraordinary, right? It takes people by surprise. Or in some cases, as we were talking about in the previous classes that David and William covered, when people step outside of the norm to do the right thing, they're looked upon as kind of an outcast. They're looked upon as mad, right? As the examples were given with Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, and there's been many throughout society. That's just the examples that we covered in the class, as was shown through the peaceful solution. But there's many, many examples where people stood up for morality. They stood up for upholding the rules. They stood up for teaching people to uphold the rules and not to retaliate, not to fight back. You know, the author of the peaceful solution, obviously his father held those concepts very dear to him. And who knows, possibly his father or grandfather, whoever, taught those things to him, and he passed those things down to his children, and it stuck with him so much so that it made such an impression in his mind that that energy and that influence went into the development of this entire curricula. And we talk a little bit about ripple effect and how, you know, the thoughts and the ideas of one person and a team that worked with him has rippled outward now and is covering the entire earth. Now, you know, we're seeing changes little by little because no change is overnight. It takes time. The journey of 1,000 miles, it starts with the first step, and it's easy to look at 1,000 miles and see how much that is, you know, especially if you're walking it. But little by little, you know, person by person, character by character, choice by choice, we're starting to change society for the better. And that is the goal, to change the hearts and the minds. And of course, what we're covering in this chapter, chapter 6, talking about leadership, because everybody, you know, it's easy for, I could see if you have not been educated, if you have not been trained, as we covered previously, you know, our future is far too important to leave in the hands of someone else, right? We need to take accountability. We need to take responsibility. We need to take initiative for implementing the principles that we're learning in the peaceful solution to create in society what we desire to see, starting with ourselves, right? We can't just look at the leaders in society and go, well, why don't they do this? Or why don't they do that? Or the world will never change. Because if everybody had that attitude, of course, that is absolutely correct. The world would never change, except it will continue to spiral downward. But when we take the initiative ourselves and using that self-leadership, right? And when we have value for not only our lives, but the lives of others and the environment around us, then as we are educated, we can take the appropriate steps to move forward, and in the process of that, encourage and motivate others towards a specific positive goal so that we can start to initiate a change in society that will benefit all, not just the person who's making the change. Of course, as we teach others to develop a positive character, as teachers teach others, teach teachers to develop a positive character, yes, the teacher benefits, right? When you teach people not to steal, you, as the teacher, benefit from the student who values the rules in your possessions enough to not take those things, right? So yes, there's a benefit that comes to you, but it's not a selfish benefit, as you see in a lot of times when nations try to negotiate and bargain deals and treaties and so forth. In some cases, it can seem to be pretty one-sided, and sometimes the other nation sees that, or an outside nation who might be an ally to a nation that might be getting taken advantage of sees that, and they don't like that, right? So when we think about these things and think about positive leadership, you know, keep in mind everything that we've covered up to this point in the first 5 chapters of the Peaceful Solution, and tie that into everything that we will be covering in future chapters and units as we proceed forward with this. But as we get into this lesson here today, or continue in the lesson, we've already gotten into it. Let's just to refresh our memories there, we will go back to LP 6D, and we'll look at procedure 6. Now, William read this last class, but we'll go ahead and read it again. It says, explain to students that just like a political or community leader, their character will also be defined their character will also define how they lead others. Like I mentioned earlier, leaders fall into two basic categories, either positive or negative, okay? And their style of leadership is going to be influenced by their character. If they value the concepts of character, morality, rules, traits such as honesty, self-control, responsibility, reliability, and so forth. If they're disciplined and if they're determined, remember there's a combination of character traits and personality skills and things of that nature that go into leadership as a whole. If they value those things, then they're going to lead those who follow them in a positive direction. If it is, on the other hand, the value for being king of the hill, so to speak, king of the mountain. I remember we used to play that game when I was coming up as a young man. The goal was to knock the other person off the top of the mountain so that you can be on top, right? And you see that as a game, yeah, but when you think about corporate America, when you think about businesses and society as a whole, when you think about people in general, sometimes people, because they're not trained, because they're not educated, they feel that in order to grow or to excel in life or in business or in any discipline, they have to put someone else down. All right? They have to knock somebody else off the ladder, or step on somebody's head or use deceit or whatever it is in order to trick their way or to take advantage or force their way to the top. And that's what we're showing through this chapter here, is that's not the way, right? The other way, or that way, brings about consequences that follow a lot later. It hurts the individual and it hurts those who is being taken advantage of. A true leader, a true moral leader, builds others up. They lift others up, and that's what you find through the peaceful solution. You think about the author of the peaceful solution and how everything that is being presented in these books here, they're to build up the student, to train the student to be capable or to have the capacity to lead and guide others to be positive members of society, to contribute to society. If they're running a business or they're a part of a team or they're on a project, right? They're able to do it in a way that doesn't take away from someone else, right? That doesn't bring harm to someone else or to the environment. Okay, and this is what we're wanting to always keep these things in mind. Anything that we do and that you teach in the peaceful solution, there's a word. It's called deleterious, I believe it is. Deleterious, delete. It means to delete or to take away from, and it's used in we don't use a lot of big fancy words because we want you to be able to understand the concepts simply and easily so that you can take them and explain them easily to someone else, right? But that word simply means, basically that which takes away. And there's certain characteristics and certain styles of leadership that take away from the members who follow or the followers of that leader. And as we were reading in the previous class, some of the leaders of countries, they embezzled money. They took money from the country and it took away from the economy and the resources of that country and the people who depended on those things, okay? And so the focus is always on the positive, accentuating the positive and eliminating the negative. And then it says, have students read the sections entitled Be a Positive Leader on pages 131 through 132, and that's what William covered last class. And What Leadership Is Not on page 133, which is where he left off at the very first three points there. Then allow students to read the scenarios and answer the questions on page 134. All right, so let's turn over to page 133. And just to back up a little bit here, let's look back to 132 under the heading, here are a few other points to keep in mind, okay, because we're talking about positive leaders, and he covered these 10 points here. You can go back and read them on a positive leader and showing the qualities and skills and the character traits that are demonstrated in a person who is or who is working to become a positive leader. No one's going to just automatically have these things initially, right? Some people might have a few of these. Some people might have none of them. Okay, but we can all learn and develop these traits and these skills once taught. And of course, we have to value the first step to valuing any trait, any skill, or learning or developing any skill or trait is to value it. Of course, we have to be taught it, but even in that, you have to value the desire to learn, to want to learn it, to improve it, right? What is that about? Well, let me find how I can make this a part of my character to be able to carry out my job as a leader or a follower or whatever it is, to become a better person. So it says here are a few other points to keep in mind. To be placed in a position of leadership is a great responsibility and should never be treated lightly, okay? Because you're responsible. A leader is responsible for something, right? They're responsible for someone or responsible for several people, okay? They could be a leader over just one person. They could be a leader over 100 or 100,000 people. It doesn't matter. But it is a great responsibility, and it should not be treated lightly. When people start to treat this office or this responsibility of leadership lightly, then they start to become, it was mentioned previously, like lackadaisical, right? They become lazy. They become disinterested. They don't show care and concern. They don't have respect for the job that they have to carry out or the people that they're responsible for. Okay, and so this is why this is mentioned here. It should not be treated lightly. The measure, notice the measure of those who have a positive character and are great leaders is their ability to respect those who look to them for guidance. Okay, so this is the measure, or you can use a synonym to that word measure or as the standard, right? Because when you measure something, say you wanted to you're on a job site and you're building a house and you need a stud that's 98 inches or 120 inches, whatever the case might be. All right. So in order to know whether that stud is the proper measurement, you can't just eyeball it and say, well, that looks like that's 120 inches or that looks like that's 96 inches or whatever. No, you have to take a measuring tape. Okay. And that measuring tape gives you a standard of measurement by which to go by. And if you measure everything according to that tape, everything is going to line up. Everything is going to be the same length. Well, that's the same thing we're talking about. You can use the principles taught here in the Peaceful Solution as your measuring tape, right? Your standard to measure whether someone is a great leader, whether someone is a positive leader. And again, we're going to cover a little bit more about certain things that you can look for to determine, the character of an individual or the thoughts that kind of dominate that person's mind. Remember, without followers, there are no leaders. So treat everyone with respect and consideration. Now, keep in mind the last paragraph there. Keep in mind that positive leaders will demonstrate their leadership skills even if they are not the leader of a club or a team. And I've heard it said before by some people, well, if I can't be in charge, then I don't want to be a part of it. That's not having the attitude of humility, right? That's not the attitude of teamwork, right? That's not the attitude of working to benefit other people, because even if you're not in a position of a leader, that doesn't mean that you cannot contribute something beneficial to the team as a whole or to the project as a whole. But when you take that away, kind of like, well, if I can't be in charge of playing, then I'm going to take my ball and go home, then it could actually be detrimental to the entire project. Okay. And so, it's important to understand that not every time are we, even as teachers and leaders, even if we have a position of leadership, going to be put in that scenario, in that situation, in that group as a leader. But does that mean that we're not able to lead? No. we're still leading, we're still being an example to others by our attitude. Well, how are we taking that? How are we responding to that information that was given to us? Well, I'm not going to let you lead. We have somebody else in mind that we want to lead, but this is what you can do. Are you responding with a positive attitude? Well, as long as I'm here to be able to help and contribute, where is it that you need me? Or are we responding with a negative attitude? Well, if it's my way or the highway, and sadly that is the way it is with some people. But again, it just comes back to them being trained and accepting the training and applying these things in their life, and of course, seeing the value in everybody on the team. So when you are a positive leader, you are confident that you can make decisions that will support your positive character and by example, encourage others to do the same. Okay, remember, the development and the maintaining of a positive character always has to be at the forefront of our mind, right? Because in everything we do, regardless of the project that it might be on or the team that a leader might be leading, character always comes into play, right? Character affects every aspect of our life. We can never make a decision, or move forward in any field without considering our character, right? Because that is the influencing factor on the decisions that we make, whether they're positive or negative. So always keep that in mind. So look at 133 here. It says, leadership, and it covered these 3 points. We'll just read them really quick. What leadership is not. Leadership is not bossing people around, not using fear or threatening people to do things. Now, this is called being a bully. And leadership is not about benefiting oneself, but rather based on showing concern to all those involved. Remember, one of the attributes of being a great leader is to recognize and encourage others to use their skills and learn from others, okay? Because everybody has skills, right? And just because someone might be in a position of leadership, it doesn't mean that their skills excels everyone else around them, right? I remember listening to, I think it was a documentary, and it was talking about they were interviewing. I don't remember if it was Dale Carnegie or if it was Henry Ford. Not Dale Carnegie, Andrew Carnegie, a little bit before Dale Carnegie's time. But Andrew Carnegie or Henry Ford, and I think they had brought him. It might have been Henry Ford, but they had brought him into court, and they were questioning him about certain things and asking him a whole bunch of specific, intellectual questions. And he said, he asked him. I don't remember what the question was, but he said, do you know what this is or how this works? And the man said, no, I don't know what that is and how this works. Well, how do you expect to do, X, Y, Z? Well, why do I need to know that when I have, at my fingertips a phone that I could call anybody on my staff who is an expert in that field and ask them a question on how this works, and they can give me the explanation or they can get it done, right? And see, that's the part of the example of a leader. A leader, recognizes that everyone has skills or knowledge that can contribute to the team as a whole. And a wise leader surrounds himself with people who are experts or highly trained in certain areas that they might not be expert or highly trained in, or even if they are experts or highly trained in that. I mean, you see that even with the presidency and different offices of world leaders, governmental leaders. They have cabinets, teams. Sometimes they call it ministries. In the U.S., they call it secretaries, which is basically the same thing as a minister, someone who serves. And you have people who are over particular areas: health, finance, education, defense, and different things. And they're supposed to be well trained in that field. Well, even them who are the heads of those departments have people who are under them who are experts in micro departments or compartments, right? And all of that together helps the team work. And so a leader, they recognize and encourage others to use their skills, and also not only the leader, but those who they teach, they also learn from others as well. So let's look at these. We're going to look here at this acronym here on page 133. It says leadership is the quality of how leaders lead. All right, it's the quality of how leaders lead. And many times, in many cases, depending on what it is, the statement has been made, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And you can associate that with something like I think everybody can relate to is food, right? Pretty much everybody that I know of enjoys eating, right? Now, would you rather have 50 pounds of food that tasted like spoiled garbage? Or would you rather have a pound of nourishing food that was delicious and warm and succulent and saucy and spicy, or whatever it is that you liked, right? So it's not the quantity. You can have a room full of leaders, but nobody knows how to get anything done. Everybody's arguing, everybody's fighting, everybody's trying to be king of the hill. But when you have a room full or a couple of quality leaders, or even just one quality leader who uses the skills and the traits presented as we're learning in the peaceful solution, and many other skills that can be added to that, right? And they know how to use those things in order to encourage and motivate others, much more is going to get done than with that room full of 50 leaders, because they have a high quality of leadership, right? And with leaders, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. So leadership is the quality of how to lead others, which everything that we've talked about from chapter 1 up to here, as it was mentioned in, I think it was the note to the teacher here. On the note to the teacher in LP6A, in the first paragraph, it says in the second sentence, in fact, well, let's just read the first two sentences. In this chapter, students will learn that given the right motivation, encouragement, and skills, they have the potential to be leaders. In fact, you have been teaching them how to be positive, effective leaders from the first chapter of this unit. And people don't always see that. When they see that, character education, character development, they're not thinking about the end goal of this is going to help me to become a leader, or this is going to help me to become a better leader. But that's in effect what they've been learning this whole time. And then eventually they'll be able to take what they've learned in this chapter and tie all of that in and go and kind of have a moment, like, oh, okay, I see why it's important that we understand what character is, how our family helps to affect the development of our character, and the importance of valuing certain things in our lives, being aware of influences and understanding how what we do has the ability to ripple outward and affect people in a positive or a negative way, right? All these things build up in their mind, and they start to catch on to what's being presented to help them, if that's what they desire to be, to become a leader in society or in their family or whatever it is, but not just a leader, to become a positive leader. So we're going to look at this acronym here. It says the following acronym will help you remember the qualities of leadership. And we'll read down through them really quick, and then we'll come back and then we'll start going over each individual letter. So it's leadership here, and it's LEADERSHIP, and there's the word for every letter there. And for L, the first L in leadership is learn. Learn all you can about the world around you. E is for encourage. Encourage others to be their best. A is for attitude. Your attitude counts for a lot. Let it be positive. D, diligent. Be diligent. Never give up. E, excellence. Strive for excellence in all that you do. R is ready. Be ready to be an example of positive moral character to others. S is for sure. Be sure that your values are positive and moral. H is for humble. Be humble. Even leaders have to be followers. I is for initiative. Take the initiative and make the right choice even if no one else will. And P is for positive. Maintain a consistent, positive moral character and attitude. All right. So now that we have those points here, let's go back. I better leave this open. Let's go back to the top here. Let's go back to the top. We're going to break down some of these words a little bit we're not going to go into super deep meaning of them, but just so that you can have a general or basic idea. Because remember, you're learning to be teachers, and so even though you might not necessarily give your students all of this information, it is advantageous that you have it so that you understand, as we learn here in the procedures, right? Because that gives us our purposes and our goals, but how to, kind of break these things down and make them clearer for your students to understand it. Remember, in anything that we do as teachers, we don't want to we never want to speak above the heads of our students, right? We don't ever want to speak in a way that they don't grasp the lesson. And even we mentioned that in the procedures for the teacher. If you feel, because of your feedback, or if you see that the students aren't grasping the lessons, then it's okay. Go back and recover that lesson, to help drive the point home in the student's mind of that particular goal that needs to be brought forth. But we want to talk and teach and present things in a way that they can understand it, okay? Because we want them to be able to understand it on their level so that they can take it and apply it. And like I said before, they can actually take it and start teaching it to their friends, right? It's one of the most enjoyable things. I remember when we, before COVID, of course, we would go to different schools and we would hold assemblies in the auditoriums, and the auditoriums will be packed with 300 to 500 students per round when they would come through. And we would have our assembly for about 45 minutes or so, depending on the modules. And we would go through the lesson with them. Well, by the time we got to the, fourth or the fifth assembly, students were already answering questions and talking about the things that we were covering in the other classes. And it was the same information. It wasn't really different. It wasn't different from class to class, but, it was an indication to us that the only way they knew that was either they were, hanging around at the doors and spying, or other students were talking about it, right? They were talking about it and they were sharing it with their friends, okay? And they were excited about it. They were excited to give the information that they knew the answer to in those presentations. And as a teacher, that's something that's very rewarding. It's very enjoyable, to present information in a way that not only does the student understand it, but they value it. They get excited about it. When they get excited about it, they want to start talking about it. They want to start sharing it with their friends and hopefully putting it into practice and being an example to their friends. And that can start a pretty positive ripple effect throughout a school. But let's look at that word learn there. Learn all you can about the world around you. Like we mentioned at the beginning here, we've been learning about being a leader from the very first chapter. But, when you think about learning, you could tie that easily into the character trait of educated. And no coincidence, I think, that this is one of the first things that it's given in leadership. A leader must be educated. A person needs to be educated about their job as a leader. Like I mentioned in the last class, I wouldn't want to get on a plane and the pilot has never actually flown a plane before, right? I would want to know that they have learned all the lessons on flying a plane, how to land a plane, how to handle a plane in the case of an emergency, if there was a loss of an engine, or, going through a storm or turbulence or whatever. I want to know that they are educated in order to make decisions regarding the safety of the lives of those people who are on that plane. Okay. Not to mention it's a huge investment for the aviation, the airline. Those planes cost millions and millions of dollars. But learn all you can about the world around you. And now this doesn't mean that as a leader, you need to, in order to be a great leader, you need to go on a hiatus and travel the world for, 365 days to learn everything you can about every culture. No, it's just take time to learn about different things in society. It's easy for us to kind of be stuck in our bubble, right? Stuck in our bubble, only the things that directly affect us is what we tend to care about the most. But there's 8.5 billion people in the world, 190 or something like that countries in the world. A lot of them are as small as a little city or a state. I remember we went down to Jamaica one time, and I think the length of that it extends more east to west than it does north to south. But I think the length of that country, that entire country, could actually fit in between Abilene and Dallas, which is only 160 to 175 something miles. You know, and if you've ever been in Texas, you know how big Texas is. To go pretty much anywhere in Texas from where we are, except a little bit north, unless you go to the northwest part, it takes about six to 7 hours to get out of here from where we are, kind of right smack dab in the middle, the heart of Texas, so to speak. Now, so Texas is a pretty big state, okay, and that entire country could fit inside Texas, and probably could lay inside Texas and roll around and play inside Texas as much as it wants. But there's some very small countries, and there's some very large countries as well. Okay, but we don't need to go to those countries. We can simply read about them. We can talk to or interact with or communicate with people from those countries to learn a little bit about, culture and life and the way things were, for them, where they grew up and where they lived for a period of time. There's a lot to learn just about the news, just keeping up with the news and the society and the markets and there's a lot of conflicts taking place, right now in the Middle East there with Israel and the Palestinians and through a lot of different countries, right? And so there's a lot to learn in the world, and not just about those things, foods. Foods. There's a lot about food. You can almost start to talk to anybody about food, and right away I noticed right away in talking to certain people who I spoke with some people who were from a country in South America, Peru, and I mentioned that we had gone down to Argentina to do some presentations there, and right away they told me that, man, you've got to have Peruvian food. It's the best. It's better than any other food that you'll ever have. And right away I'm like, so you're from Peru, but it's food. People love to talk about food because, like I said before, everybody loves to eat. They value eating, right? And so there's a lot that we can do to learn about different things within society, and it'll make you more it'll make you well-rounded, as a conversationalist, somebody who can talk to you, right? Because you can kind of pick up any topic, and when you're talking to somebody from a different country or different state or something, and you just mention something about their area, now they've got it. Now you've got their interest. Oh wow, you know something about this? Oh, okay, well that's interesting, right? People like it when you take an interest in them. When you take an interest in things that's important to them, they value those things. But like we mentioned there, when you learn all you can about the world around you, of course, that's becoming educated. And if you make for your notes there, we won't go there. But page 14 talks about education as a positive character trait. And of course, this education can come through, studying, asking, being taught, come through your experiences, and so many different ways we're educated in things in life. And as far as the word educate, or learn, and you'll find this word in pretty much every procedure that's given, right? In this chapter, students will learn, okay? Or students will explore, right? That's another way of increasing your knowledge, right? Exploring. But the word learn means to gain or acquire knowledge of or skill in something by study, experience, or being taught, right? So think about it, because the process of learning doesn't stop when you leave the classroom, okay? When you're in the classroom, you're being taught. Then you take that information home and you go over it again, you're studying it. And then when you're out in society, or the world, the real world, so to speak, now you get to put it into practice, which is your experience. All that ties into learning, okay? Life is a learning experience for us. And we can take these lessons that we're learning in the peaceful solution and apply them. And of course, they will yield beneficial results. It's not just enough to be taught it, not just enough to study or to know it, but now we have to apply it. And the leader takes the initiative to do that, right? They take the initiative to learn what they need to do to improve themselves to begin with, but then they'll even take the initiative to apply what they've learned in a situation, even if they're the only ones doing it, or even if in doing so, it'll cause them embarrassment or cause them to be kind of an outcast or an oddball. Remember, that goes back into that courageousness. That being courageous, doing what needs to be done in spite of your own fear, right? Or in spite of what you feel other people might think about you. Well, the etymology or the origin of the word learn, it's from the English word leornian, and it means to get knowledge or to be cultivated, kind of like what you do with the fields. You cultivate fields in order to plant seeds in that field. You try to get rid of the weeds and turn over the earth so that oxygen and nutrients can get into it or be brought up from it. And then you can give the seeds that are planted there an opportunity to take root and grow and become strong. Well, the seeds that are being planted in our minds are these principles that are taught through the peaceful solution. It also means study, read, and think about. It says with a base of to follow or find the track. To follow or find the track. And this is the definition of the word learn, here. It's from the root word lois, and it means furrow or track. Furrow or track. And you think about I don't do a lot of hunting, but and it doesn't necessarily have to be hunting. It could be just looking for. Sometimes they'll use trackers when they're looking for a person who is lost in the woods, right? Or an animal that was lost in the woods, or whatever the case might be. But they'll use a tracker, and the tracker will pick up on certain things, certain clues in the environment, and follow those clues on a path in order to find what they're looking for. Okay, and we're doing the same thing when we're following the path of those who have put into practice these moral principles and have become people of integrity. They've become positive leaders. We're kind of like, metaphorically speaking, following in their footsteps. We're tracking them. We're following in their footsteps. They use the word also when they talk about a trailer, right? When a trailer, if you've ever pulled a trailer behind a vehicle, you can tell if those axles are bent or if they're straight or if they're not or whatever. That trailer needs to track the towing vehicle perfectly, at least to line up behind that towing vehicle perfectly in order for you to drive down the road safely. Well, it's the same thing. Us or students or followers, tracking or following or walking in the footsteps of a leader. But we're talking about learning here, right? Learning and putting things into your mind to make you more resourceful to others. It's related to another group of words from German to track, English, laist. I'm not sure how that's pronounced properly, but it means. It also means sole of the foot. Now think about the course, or the route or direction followed, or the track, like I mentioned before. You think about the word course, right? A college course, or even in this book, the course that we're going through, right? A course, a path that we're on. And as we learn, we're on a course to moral excellence, and we'll learn a little bit more about that later. Let me look back here to LP1E. LP1E. So that word course was very interesting. LP1E and procedure 1. It says, inform students that they will begin, this is the very first chapter here in the character unit, More Than Meets the Eye. Inform students that they will be studying from the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, and this program will encourage and develop the development of positive moral character. Again, remember, that's what leaders do. They encourage others It says, explain to students that during the course of this program, so we're on track to learning, to building our minds, to becoming educated, they will also learn that developing a positive moral character is the first step in accepting themselves and others, controlling their behavior, respecting society and the environment, and making responsible choices, okay? And so I just thought that was interesting there in regards to the word learn. It's to cultivate the mind, to acquire or gain knowledge and skill in something. And then we look at the word E there, or the letter E, which is an acronym for the word encourage, and it's encourage others to be their best. Encourage others to be their best. And of course, the next two, encourage and attitude, we could tie that really real quick into page 127. I'll just go back there real quick for you. Page 127, and your encouragement and your attitude, because those two things are very important. Yeah. It says, in the 1, 2, 3, third paragraph, it says, motivate or positive leaders, on the other hand, are people of integrity. They maintain and demonstrate their positive moral character consistently through their beliefs, attitudes, and actions. They motivate others also to attain positive moral characters and to strive towards excellence in all areas of their life. In addition to this, positive leadership will result in the ripple effect that will be advantageous not only to the individual, but to society as a whole. Okay? And so, that's important in leading others, having, being encouraging to others or motivating them. In fact, page 21, real quick. Should have had little notes there. Yeah, page 21 there. And we'll just look back right there because it talks about don't accentuate the negative or accentuating the positive. Accentuate means to emphasize down in the bullet point there. And in the second paragraph, it says, not accentuating negative character traits means first realizing that there are some aspects of your character that need changing. Then focus on, let me read that again. Not accentuating negative character traits means first realizing that there are some aspects of your character that need changing, then focusing on doing just the opposite of the behavior you want to change. And if you look to the last sentence there, it says, the point is to focus on improving your character by eliminating the negative and accentuating the positive. And that, I read that because that ties into what we're talking about as far as being encouraging. When you encourage somebody, you're not there to point out all the bad things that they're doing. You want to encourage them, you want to accentuate the positive, right? And in some situations, you might have to focus on the positive things that they're doing and using that as a springboard to help them in other areas. Because no one wants to be constantly told that they're doing something wrong. If that's the only thing that they're here, then they're going to think, well, can I do anything right? Is anything that what's the purpose of really trying if only thing that's being pointed out to me is what I'm doing is wrong? And so it's necessary as a leader to encourage others as well. The word courage or encourage means to give courage to. Now, remember, we talked about courage, is standing up or doing what needs to be done in spite of how you feel or in spite of your fear, right? But encourage means to give courage to inspire with courage, to do what? What are we inspiring people with courage to do? If you look at page 85, what are we inspiring people with courage to do? Let's look at page 85 there. Page 85 at the very bottom paragraph, it says maintaining your character will sometimes require courage, okay? And sometimes as a leader, you'll have to give courage to. And this could be with words or, motivating them with the talk or, encouraging words and so forth. But it comes from within them that they're going to have to, each one of us has to maintain our positive character. Having knowledge, wisdom, and a plan will give you the confidence you need to, notice here, stand your ground. Okay, stand your ground for positivity, for positive moral care. Don't stand your ground, in negative things, but in positive things. Don't be discouraged if you find yourself in a situation, notice here, where you are the only one trying to do what's right. Remember, you must stand up for what is right, or you can fall for anything. So notice here, be prepared by making full use of what you've learned in the Peaceful Solution Character Education class. Preparation will enable you to avoid the curveballs and pitfalls of life. And that's a part of what we need to be encouraged to make a person strong in their character, or stronger, or give support in their character so that they can handle those pitfalls. So when a situation comes up where they're faced with making a moral decision, they'll be able to stand up and do the right thing. It also means to forward, to promote, give support to, or make stronger. And as we talked about, accentuating the positive and eliminating the negative. Leaders encourage their followers to set their minds in advance in decision making so they can be their best, right? We want all of those who we're teaching to be the best that they can be. And sometimes, sometimes people in society, they're kind of afraid of that. I've come across a time or two people who did not want to educate or train people because they were afraid that that person was going to become better than they were and take their job. It's almost like they didn't have confidence in their own skills, their own skill set, to fear that somebody else was going to become better than them in a particular skill and take their job. Well, a leader can't allow that to prevent them from instructing or guiding, teaching, or motivating or encouraging another person to be their best. We should always want everybody to be their best, right? We're not always going to be the best at a particular skill. There's always going to be somebody that knows a little bit more or can do it a little bit better than us. There's nothing negative about that. We should encourage them to always strive in using these principles, to be the very best that they can be, right? Many times, many students have excelled past their teacher in certain things because of certain possible genetic traits that they had, right? Maybe they came from a family or a line of parents who were exceptionally gifted and smart in grasping and retaining and applying information. Whatever the case may be, that's not a bad thing. I as a leader, even considering myself as a parent, I want my children to be better than I am in certain things. I want them to grow and not fall into the pitfalls and the curveball, and have to deal with certain things that were setbacks for me growing up. I want them to have the knowledge and the skills and the resources to make better choices so they can move further, faster in life, right? And we should never want to hold anybody back for fear that, they're going to take our job or take our position or anything like that. If we're doing what we need to do, our position, our jobs are secure. But just for your notes there on page 80 and 81 there, it talks about setting your mind in advance and watching your thoughts, right? Watching your thoughts, because it's important, encouraging others to set their minds in advance, because they're going to be faced with difficulties. They're going to be faced throughout life, or on the job site, or in the office, or at school, right? They're going to be faced with things that kind of can be a little bit of a stumbling block for them. So they need to, or it could be opposition to them, or it could be disrespect, whatever the case might be. They're going to have to put into practice the social skills and the character traits, the principles that they've learned in the Peaceful Solution. So they need to be ready, right? And the more we practice to learn about these things in practice, the more able we are to respond in a positive way. And of course, as a leader, when you're encouraging others to do and to be their best, and as page 60 talks about, you're being an influence. A leader is a positive influence. A leader should be a positive influence to others. And when you're doing what we're talking about here, of course, that's exactly what you are, positive leader. Well, in the A there, it's attitude. It says your attitude counts for a lot. let it be positive. And of course, we know that an attitude is the way you think and feel about something or someone. And it's the definition of that word a little bit more there. It says it's a complex of a complex mental state involving beliefs or feelings and values and dispositions to act in certain ways. Now here's another. This is not of a person, but I thought it was interesting that they give, because I've heard it in aviation before. They talk about the attitude of the aircraft. And that doesn't mean the aircraft is, having a bad day, so it's not going to leave the ground. It's got its wings folded. No, it's just it's the position of the aircraft relative to its environment, or in this case, when you're flying a plane, it's the horizon, right? You don't want the horizon to be, perpendicular, or intersecting with the window of the plane, or the horizon to be upside down. That means you're flying upside down. And sometimes when the avionics goes out on a plane, that's all they have to rely on. If they can see at night, it's a little bit different. They do have some things that they could fall back on to tell them what direction the plane is facing, if it's up or down or pitching or yawing or whatever. But they talk about this, and it says the position of an aircraft or spacecraft relative to a frame of reference, like the horizon. And I was thinking about that because, in some ways, our attitude, this applies to us, the way we think or feel in relation to the standards or the principles that we've been taught from the peaceful solution, right? You can look at that peaceful solution or the principles of the peaceful solution as the horizon, right? And our attitude is either flying level or it's pitching off to one way or to the other, okay? And so we have to take that into consideration, because if we're faced with something in which we can develop a negative attitude, if we're not careful, because remember, your attitude is how you think and feel about something, and we know thoughts lead to feelings and feelings lead to action. So if it's a negative attitude, eventually it's going to lead to negative choices, negative actions, right? So we want to take into consideration how our attitude is in relation to what we've been taught, okay? And we can always go back to the standard of what we've learned in the peaceful solution, irregardless of who we're dealing with, right? Because that person right there, it might seem like that person is our test, but the test is in how we're going to respond, right? And we can go back to what we've learned in the peaceful solution and say, okay, examine our thoughts, reevaluate our thoughts, and say, okay, why am I feeling this way? What has been done? What is the right course of corrective action, right? And then make the adjustments necessary to bring that aircraft back to level again, so that you can see and think clearly to respond in a peaceful way. Because again, how we respond in those situations is also a reflection of our leadership skills, which is a reflection of our character. Let me see here. I'm going to skip forward a little bit here as we finish this out with this attitude part. This was, I got this from online here. It was kind of interesting. It is from peterstark.com. He's some, I can't remember. I wrote it down. But anyway, he's kind of an expert in leadership. That's what it was. And it says, one of the greatest gifts a leader can bring to a team is self-awareness and understanding of their attitude and the impact it plays on the relationship, the performance of their team and everyone around them. It says some leaders are described as having a bad attitude. They exhibit pessimism, laziness, rudeness, gossip, procrastination, or negativity. Other bad attitudes are developed by events such as unhappy customers, boss, or a team member who undermines your expectation. The problem with a leader having a bad attitude is that it's like a virus. It spreads quickly. Now keep in mind chapter 5 about the ripple effect there. A bad manager can ruin the work environment and lower morale for everyone, whether it's a manager, whether it's a teacher, even a parent. A parent is displaying negative characteristics and guiding their children If they're not guiding them in an appropriate way, well, it can make it a little bit difficult for the child in receiving the information that's being presented. Okay, not that they have a right to reject it, but it can make it a little bit difficult. Managers with bad attitudes are also expensive to keep, he said. When their attitude impacts employees, it's usually felt by customers who know they can find another business with more positive people to service their business needs. The greatest thing about attitude, and this is this very same thing, and I only read this because a lot of these things are supported. He supports what the Peaceful Solution is teaching here, is that we all have the ability to control it. We have the ability to control our attitude, our thoughts, and our feelings, in other words. It's about a choice. And then he gives a quote from a neurologist and psychiatrist here. He says, our greatest freedom is the freedom to choose our attitude. And that's in part, there's a lot of other great things that we have, but, it is important that we make positive choices in regards to our attitude, because our attitude can affect, it can kind of make or break a team, especially if people are looking to you as a source of knowledge and encouragement and guidance. If a leader doesn't have a positive attitude, it can kind of get the day started off pretty bad for everybody else. So I want to encourage everybody to remember these things. We got a few more points to go in this these acronyms here. We stopped at the letter A, attitude, so we'll pick up next class with D, diligent. And our next class will be 5/19, which is Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. And we'll continue with this acronym on leadership. But remember to practice these things, go over them, learn all you can, and take every opportunity you can to show everybody, be an example to everyone else of what you're learning about being a positive leader as taught from the Peaceful Solution. Everyone enjoy your evening, and we look forward to seeing you at the next class.